Hi, folks. This is Sean McLean, and I wanted to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about AI in learning and AI in facilitation. We often run into the idea, and we talk about a couple of problems or concerns with using AI in the learning and training and facilitation spaces. And some of those huge problems are, on the one hand, we're concerned that AI will replace everybody. But at the same time, we keep talking about finding ways to work with AI and use AI. And so I wanted to come up with an example where we would do just that in a way that makes the human element important too. We also find a lot of times when we're working with AI prompting, and I don't know if this is a called out issue or not yet, but we use AI mostly in a vacuum. When we write prompts, we write them by ourselves. The AI responds, and then we tune that. It's rare that we do something collaboratively. So I wanted to kind of give some examples of how we could do that. It's one of the unique things about a synchronous session. When you have more than one person in the room, you potentially have more than one person writing the same prompt. And that's a huge opportunity, and I just wanted to play with that a little bit. Another one of the problems we often run into is AI use cases that don't run us kind of like afoul of personally identifiable information or sensitive work information or corporate information. That's something we have a lot of concerns with. So I thought I would build out a use case in a learning environment that kind of addresses all of those, uses AI, but kind of keeps the human as the core element in the loop, builds AI, but in a collaborative fashion, and maybe addresses something that AI can do that doesn't necessarily run us right into all the kinds of things that are corporation or company specific. So, um, in that case, I have brought along with me, as you can see, two interesting companions into my classroom, Ms. Wednesday and Mr. Lucky. And I thought possibly we would do the kinds of things that always happen in a training and facilitative class, right? When we go to those things, we run into that. All the trainings start in generally the same way or facilitation. Tell us about yourself, tell us about your background, tell us your expectations for these learning sessions. And, sometimes we'll do give us your favorite hobby. And I thought we could use that in a collaborative manner in a prompt. So to that end, I asked Lucky and um, Wednesday to give us a little bit about themselves, that same kind of classic prompt that we see so often. So there's Lucky's information, a developer, 3 years, and a little bit of those pieces. And then hopefully there's Wednesday, a service desk analyst for 6 years. Um, Getting tired of all of the same old things about that. And we'll assume that the class that we're going to be talking about or delivering is maybe about AI or the session that we're talking about. So to that end, I've got an example of a prompt. And don't mind me while I look to the other side of the screen while I make sure that I can do this. But what I did was I generated a prompt and I wanted to kind of talk through this a little bit. I'm going to have, and this is something I'm just going to throw into a GPT as an example. And first, I use the concept of RICE, role, instructions, context, and examples. And I set the role for this GPT and say, you're going to help generate a collaborative learning guide. And so I'm going to use the introductions that our two participants gave with their background and their expectations and maybe the class objectives as well. So if we look at this prompt, we'll see that information and then see that what I'm doing is I'm directing the prompt to build out a collaborative learning guide, one that isn't about me or the instructor, but about the participants and their contributions. Now, you'll notice as we looked at this learning guide that I identified the objectives for the class. We'll talk a little about AI and large language models and MCP and A2A and those components. But what I'm asking it to do is structure that learning guide around the information that they give us in the introduction, also to provide some connection points. The other thing I did with this was I made room for our participants to use the same guide and the same prompt to continue building in the review. Most classes have that section, right, where you say, hey, What did you learn? What were your insights? How did you go farther with this? And so we're going to keep building this learning guide together. Now, to me, it addresses those core problems that we talked about. So it's crucial now that all the participants are a part of it. So AI isn't replacing any of us. It's also not using AI in a vacuum. We're all being a part of this. And in fact, one of the biggest problems we run into in those synchronous classes with all the people is when we do a review or something, or we say, hey, anyone have anything to add? You get silence. But when we realize that all of the participants are as much a part of this learning as I, the facilitator, am, or more so because of their contributions, might make them more interested in reviewing. I've tested this in several different classes and found it's really kind of cool. So there's our overall prompt, and I'm leaving this up so you guys can see it. It looks like Wednesday was disappointed that she didn't have her avatar in there, so it looks like she may have added it. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this prompt and I'm going to throw it into uh, just a general GPT. And at the bottom, I'm going to take those two introductions. And so in grabbing those, I'm going to ask GPT to start a learning guide based on the information that they gave me. Now, notice as well in the beginning of the prompt, I said, hey, if you by accident on the intro give any personally identifiable information, other than your first name, or, please anonymize it, remove the company and those pieces from it. And we can go further with that in ongoing prompts to continue, having it kind of whitewash the information, remove the companies if the person gave that, or specific examples, but just broadly, what's your background? So let's see what happens. This is the part that we all kind of cross our fingers about and see what we get. So you can see what's happening here, that's interesting is the prompt turns around and generates a little bit of information taken from the people. Now, in this case, I used two, but obviously, if we had more, it would build me a more nuanced and broader profile information. But then it starts the learning guide. I love that it calls it a living document. And it talks kind of not just about the objectives, but it talks about those objectives. And I love this. It talks about the objectives in the context that they brought me in the chat when they said, hey, some have more experience than others. There 6 years as an analyst and 3 years as a developer. So here's how it might land for the newer folks. And then you'll notice what it's doing is it looks to put information that the participants will continue to add. Then it takes the information and it's generating helpful connection points that might land in the context that we gave it. In the context of someone who's maybe newer, participant one, your recent adventure, participant two. So it's already doing the anonymization piece, but it's also starting to connect, hey, here's what you told me. Now that's something I could do, but it just did it a lot faster. And if I had 25 people in the room, or even 10 or 12 or 16, it would do this in a way that would be effective, but hopefully would connect to all of those participants. So there's our first example of using AI in a way that addresses some of the issues. It's not replacing us, it's working with us as a tool. It adds a collaborative element to AI that I think actually broadens its scope. And it has the potential, because the other piece is the information that it's bringing and building this learning guide is only about the class. And so it's dynamic for every version of the class that we teach. I may teach the same class 100 times, but it'll always be different participants. And so this guide will always be different and unique. So it's an added value that the people will walk away with from the class. So I hope this was interesting, maybe gets you thinking for people in the training, facilitation, and learning spaces, or in the technical spaces where we're working workshops that are along these lines. And I hope maybe you think about trying it out and add your own tweaks and adjustments and put those in the comments. Hopefully, what we'll be able to do is another recording like this where we take it the next step. There's a couple other cool tricks I want to do with this collaborative learning guide that we're building in this synchronous class or synchronous session. So thank you for giving me your attention, and I hope that this has been valuable.